on behalf of where I, Dara Kalima, the community poet, chat with folks who speak on behalf of their respective communities. And I always say this, so I feel like a fraud because or maybe I just know really awesome people. I say that too. My gosh, I'm sorry to those of you who've listened to all the episodes so far because I sound really redundant in the beginning, but that doesn't matter. I am so excited for today's episode. And I've been getting feedback from people about how they're really excited by all my episodes. So that's really cool. I'm really excited that you guys are enjoying the show so far because y'all never know who I'm going to bring in. So you did not know or see this one coming probably, but this is a very dear friend of mine. And I just cannot say enough words about why they're a dear friend of mine. I messaged them probably last week or so saying like, can you do this show? And they were like, yes. And I was like, yes. I think I've done that to a few people and twisted their arms, but I'm really excited to have this conversation specifically. And so I'm doing a bad job, and this is why I don't do bios and real introductions. I'm just gonna say this is part of, hopefully this conversation is the caliber of conversation, not saying that the other ones weren't, but hopefully this is the conversation that I've sort of envisioned when I did on behalf of. I want to have conversations with everyone from all the different places and the types of things that people are part of. But I think as much as we can have fun conversations about all the things that people are into, there's some conversations that are important that needs to be had. And so that's why after I read the last book I read, and I'll probably talk about that a little later, I messaged my friend and was like, we need to talk and we need to talk on this show. Please talk with me. So I'm going to stop making weird sounds and I'm just going to stop being super silly. And I'm just going to say, hey, friend, can you please say your name to people?
Hi, friend. My name is Virginia Seewaldt.
Hey, Virginia. Okay, so Virginia, what are your pronouns?
She, her, hers.
Awesome. So tell folks about yourself.
Okay. I hate this part too. I don't think bio. I guess I'm a psychologist in New York City. I do work with individuals and groups, and also more recently doing work with white people, trying to do some white awareness and working on understanding whiteness, and so groups around that too.
There's more to you than just that though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, what else do you want to know?
You're a cat mom.
I'm a cat mom. Yes, and she's perched and poised right now, ready to come up here. So we may get a sighting of her. I'm an aunt.
Yay for aunties, because I'm one too.
What else? I'm a not former. I hope to be again. Oh, hello.
Oh, we heard her.
Hello. Here she comes. She's got to gear up and yeah.
You said you were a former, not former.
I've done some triathlons. That's yeah. So I'm hoping to do those again in my future. Haven't done one in a while. And what else? I don't know. I blank out.
That's okay. You're an awesome person. That's what that means. You're just
Yeah.
an awesome person who's done a lot. It's always hard to do your bio like on the spot, but also it's also interesting to see what people come up with when asked that question, because there's so many things. Like when I did another episode that already aired with my friend who did she was on behalf of mixed race children. She totally forgot to say that she was a mom.
Like, right, it's like the obvious things that you don't even think to say.
I was like, you do have some kids, don't you?
Yeah.
Of all the things that she said, she mentioned her boy band fandom, but she totally missed the mom part. And I was like, okay, great. Mm-hmm. So it's all good. It is always interesting to see how people introduce themselves. So I think you sort of hinted at it, but can you tell me what community we are speaking on behalf of? Oh, wait, I didn't ask you that. I just said, tell me about yourself. What communities are you part of? My bad.
Oh, it's okay. So yes, I'm part of the community of therapists. I'm part of the community of group therapists, part of the community of white people, part of the community of white people trying to talk to other white people about whiteness. I guess I'm part of the community. I don't really consider cat moms my community because I don't I don't commune with cat moms. I'm part of the neurodivergent community. I think that's a new one for me, like really finding groups and people who are also ADHDers and really finding community and understanding in that for the first time, since since going back, like had this since childhood, but no idea what it was. So that's a nice kind of community. Um, and I'm also, I don't know, community of, I'm a TikToker, not, I don't make videos. Like I'm a voyeur. Like I love watching and learning from TikTok. So that's another one of my communities, I guess.
I love it. I was wondering if you were gonna mention TikTok.
Yeah, and a reluctant Facebook community, I guess. Like I have a love-hate relationship with Facebook. I wouldn't know you without Facebook, but Facebook kind of gets on my nerves.
Yeah. It's that kind of that drunk uncle. They're a spectacle. You don't want to own them, but also they're part of the family. You know?
Right. Right. Can't live with them, can't live without them.
You're just like, yes, I guess I gotta claim you because my DNA is gonna eventually give me out up anyway, but you know?
Yeah.
So that said, what community are you speaking on behalf of today?
I'm speaking on behalf of white people trying to talk to other white people, white educators, talking to white people about whiteness.
So awesome. One. So for those people who don't know, that's kind of how we met. Well, I mean, it is how we met, but that is why we met. Let me put it that way. I think that's not how we met that, but that is why we met for sure.
Mhm.
There was a secret, non-secret group on Facebook. I love saying that. I mean, it's like that group was like Fight Club. Don't talk about Fight Club, but everyone's joining Fight Club.
A secret group of 3 million people.
Exactly. But oddly, people don't know about it still. Like
Yeah.
I don't understand how that well, I don't understand it. But there was a post that was made and that I made about a book, and Jenny asked me to reread the book again, and I didn't know who she was, even though we were in the group before that, because you were in the beginning and I was there in the beginning too. So we have similar memories, but we were not engaging each other back then. And then I reached out to somebody. I was like, "Who is this person legit? Like, why am I reading this book again?" But they co-signed you. They co-signed you. So I was like, "Okay,
Wait a
sure."
minute. I didn't ask you to reread the book. I asked you if I could talk to you about the book, and you said if we're gonna do that, I have to reread the book. So
Okay, so sure, something like that. I don't remember. I don't. You're probably right. My memory's crap. So I will trust you.
yeah, but I didn't know
I
you vetted me. I never knew
I,
that.
I absolutely did.
I mean, I get it. I didn't know that though.
I was like, "Who is this person, and should I trust them?"
Gosh.
And they were like, "Yeah, no, they're absolutely on up and up." And so I was like, "Okay, sure." And then we met in a coffee shop, and we've been friends ever since. It was the
Yes.
best coffee shop I've ever attended. I don't think that's true, but it was the best, like, because I don't drink coffee, so I can't say anything true about the coffee shop. But it was the best gathering with a stranger in a coffee shop I've ever had.
Yeah, that was a lovely beginning to a beautiful friendship, and
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yay. So, how did you even get to find yourself in this community?
Well, starting from that secret, not so secret group, um, so it was the 2016 election. And so in this Facebook group that was, can we name it? Is it, or is
Yeah, I
it,
mean, I think it's fine.
the group cannot be named? It's, it was Pantsuit Nation, right? So it was this group. And, you know, before the election, it was all, "Oh, okay, we're going to vote for Hillary." And then after the election, it was everybody posting about how scared they were, and what was going to happen under the new administration. And because it was a mostly women's group, and just by sheer numbers there were more white women than women of color. And so a Black woman posted a post on the page and said, hey, because there's so many more white women, why don't we have, and y'all are drowning us out, if we could just have a post where women of color just post, and white women can just be quiet and you can learn, and we'll, post about our fears and our concerns. And I was reading that and I was like, wow, like what a opportunity. Like, this is not something we get to be a part of or be witness to every day. Like, this is a gift. Holy shit. Like, let's just sit back and like watch and like just read. And oh my God, I can't, like, this is so generous. Like, this is hugely generous. And I start to read and I think I'm not even like one comment in. And the first thing I see are white women going, we will not be silenced. How dare you ask us to just listen? This is reverse racism. And this is what men do to us. And, just I was horrified and disappointed and like, oh my God, like, how are you not recognizing what an opportunity this is? And so as I continue to read, what I also started to understand was from the comments and the responses, how much I still didn't know. So just about racism as a bigger system, about what is white fragility, what is like all these terms that I was running into. And so there were women of color and white women allies sort of posting comments and posting links to different, there was like a PhD in critical race theory, like right there on a Facebook page, really. And so I was realizing as I was reading how much I still didn't know. But I was smart enough to keep my mouth shut, unlike, so many people were like kind of doubling down. And I just, was reading up, like up late, just like learning, taking it all in. And like I went from not even knowing never having heard the phrase white privilege and like, oh, what's this? And looking at Peggy McIntosh and the invisible knapsack and like, holy crap, like really just like my mind blowing every time I'm reading something new. And then eventually getting astute enough just in like a matter of kind of days to know like, oh, okay, this white person just said this comment. I know this article from this thing I read yesterday, like this article would be a good thing for them to read. That would be, so I started posting links, and I didn't have enough to like use my own words, but I was posting a lot of links. And so, there were two different Black women, one who was starting her own group. And she said, hey, if there are white women who really want to be part of a group of white women and women of color working together. And so this is Lisa Michelle, who started a group, Real Talk, and like, come over and be part of this group. So I was like, okay, great. She's like, this is what's going on in here is not, not useful. So kind of went over there, joined that group. And then another Black woman, Rayma McCoy McDeed, she was like, hey, we got this little group over here starting of people of color and white people. It was, wasn't women, it was just people of any. And so that was a smaller group. And so just sort of starting in those spaces, and again, learning and doing calls to action together with people, like was sort of how it all began. And then, I just continued kind of working on my own whiteness, kind of reading, working on stuff. And just, I was like, I know I want to do more. But I don't know how, I don't know where, I don't know what my, what my role in all of this is going to be. And then just sort of being open, like being in different organizations, and having opportunities come up. And I don't know, just sort of following a path, and being asked, hey, like do you want to talk to some white people about this? Or being at a conference and having this idea that like I approached you about, like, hey, I have this idea of how to use, thinking about white fragility in terms of, like the IFS community. How can we use internal family systems, some mode of therapy? How like this feels like it would work really well with like the shame that goes with white fragility. And it just kind of like it's been evolving from there.
That is one, it's so exciting to hear the story again, even though I mean, I never branched off to the other groups necessarily. I don't think I saw all those call to actions. I was in the group when it was, let's all go to the polls. And I didn't want to be in the group. So like I got pulled in by a friend and I didn't want to be in the group. So I was just like, I wasn't paying attention to it. And so I vaguely remember that post saying, hey, y'all, can y'all just watch us? And I sort of saw it blow up, but I also was not really paying attention to any of it back then. And then by Thanksgiving was like my first real post about like, y'all keep saying y'all want to do something different or something. Who are you inviting to Thanksgiving? Or who are you spending Thanksgiving with? And what's funny is I wrote that post and this one guy was like, yeah, I'm in New York or I'm near New York. Let's go have a cup of coffee. I ain't never had coffee with this dude. I think we may still be Facebook friends, but I ain't never had coffee with this dude. And I think that's so hilarious that I'm just like, yeah, so when? Because my whole point was like the performative nature of it, right? Like people want to say or claim that they're going to do the work, but I love looking at wedding photos. I love looking at family gatherings. I love looking at those big group photos and noticing how blinding those photos are. Right. Because then when are you doing the work? Where are you doing the work? Like the work is cool, but if you're not actually interacting with people and you're not like getting to really know people, how do you actually continue? How does the work become personal to you? And not just something hypothetical. So it's very fascinating to me to that's why I asked that question in Thanksgiving. That was like probably my first post. I've written a few since then. I'll let you know. I've written a few since then. But that was the first one. And people were like, yeah, I'm gonna do this thing and I'm gonna commit to that. And I'm just like, and I even went back and was like, so how did that go? And I don't think most people ever really did any of the things that they said they were going to do, but I definitely never got that cup of coffee. Not that I drink coffee, but I was like, I don't drink coffee, let's do tea. We never made that plan. But it's just like, I see you. Because if it was important, you would have made time and commitment. It didn't just falter because of me and my schedule. My schedule was busy, but it wasn't just my schedule.
Right.
So it's interesting. So this is 6 years later now, like coming up on November would be that election.
Right.
That election that changed everything. So a lot of people were very committed then. A lot of people were very committed during George Floyd. You don't seem to be walking away from this commitment.
No.
Can you tell me a little bit more about why or what or?
Sure. Yeah, I think even just during that time period between the election, Thanksgiving, as everything that I was learning, it sort of really hit me like, oh, this is the thing. Like this is the thing. Like that I think what I hadn't realized, like the big thing I hadn't realized until then was that racism and like systemic racism was done on purpose, that it was intentional. And I think once I grasped that, I was like, well, if it was done, then it can be undone. And like, I want to be part of its undoing. And it felt like, well, this is not going to happen. I mean, I think I naively sort of thought it could happen in our lifetime, just like as more people were becoming more aware, more white people were becoming more aware. I don't really believe that anymore. I don't know. I don't think it's gonna change, and it'll change, but like not be eradicated in my lifetime. But um, it feels like, so it's life work, like it's lifelong work. And also because just my own having been socialized as a white person for many, many more decades than, than until now, that there's a lifetime of unlearning everything that I've learned. And, and also I heard another white woman say recently that really stuck with me. I'm being re-socialized as a white person into whiteness every day. And so like that undoing is constant.
Wow.
I Yeah.
That's a statement.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I just finished reading. So the book that I posted that we were not talking about, but we're talking about, for everyone who doesn't know, was White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. And last year, she released Nice Racism. And so I bought it when we were traveling. I just finished it. And oh my goodness, if I have not figured out the post, but there's a post coming. I just have not. I whole different sidebar conversation for later. But that book, so much more delicious than so it's so much better written, so much more better written. So not proper English in that statement. That's okay. Someone said when you have enough degrees, you can butcher the language. So I'm just gonna go with that. It's like, I got 3. I can do it. I have rights to do it. I paid enough money.
Artistic license.
But it's so delicious in terms of the way she just like you need nice white fragility as a primer to Nice Racism. Because she mentions a lot of white fragility. She references it quite a few times. But oh gosh, I just lost my whole frame of thought talking about how I can butcher the language. My goodness. She talks about a lot of it being like a lifetime work. And but she also talks about, she's in both books, she talks about individualism. And when I asked you to be here, part of it was because of that individualism. And and even ties to your last statement that you just said about the person you overheard, that and I wrote in a poem, I think. And I mean, it's a constant concept. I'm trying to think about this as I'm trying to frame my thoughts. But I always said like the work, and it was even, oh my gosh, it all comes together to the same thought. So yesterday I was watching something on Facebook or YouTube. So I'm not a TikToker, but everything is coming from TikTok. So it could have been a TikTok thing and it ended up on whatever it was on.
Right.
This guy has said, as he learned to deal with his relationship stuff, and as he was healing from it, he realized his life lessons was someone else's traumas they had to heal from. And so it's sort of like the same thing about when I think about racism and how it's impacted, right? Like I would hate to be white because the work that white people have to do and go through to unlearn, like the things that they have to unlearn takes away so much, where the things that people of color and all people of color in theory, and especially Black people have to learn, we win. If we unlearn what has been forced upon us, we're gaining so much more of our esteem that was taken away from us. We're gaining so much of our culture, life, belief systems, but white people have to like be taking down pegs, and to some extent, because it's like they've been given all these privileges that are sort of like, oh wait, that's not real. I didn't earn what?
Right.
Like I would hate to be in that position to learn that a lot of things that I thought was mine or natural that I worked for actually was not what it really was of a system, right? Like I would hate to be in that position. But what's been interesting, because tied to all of that, because of their position, they get to feel like individuals and they don't get to see systems that have been in play to make them feel like individuals. The conversation always flips back to the individual versus like that whole group of people. Like that's how we talk about them. It's always the African Americans or the Blacks or the people of color or them. But I'm not, in discourse. But you said in your and I didn't write down your exact wording, but in your communities that you're part of, you mentioned that you were part of white people what and such. And I found interesting, and this is not a knock to any past guests, but most people did not identify a culture or a race group who were white, or who I would identify as white, who or get the privilege of being white representing. A lot of the Black folks who have come somewhere somehow identify their ethnic group or their race group, even if it's part of just saying that they're Greek, because their Greek nature is also a Black sorority or whatever. So they're still always sort of putting that out there to an extent. And so it's interesting. And I know we talked about it a little bit before you came. So I'm going to just put that out there so everyone else, so there's a little bit of a plant in that conversation question a little bit, but can you talk about, because you also said something in our conversation beforehand about that struggle to identify that, or can you just say a little more there, if that makes sense?
Sure. I mean, if I feel like I'm not going in the direction of the question, feel free to redirect me. But
my question was foggy, so we'll see where we go.
Okay. All right. Well, just sort of, I was thinking when you were talking about individuals versus collective, and like, sometimes the easiest way to irritate a white person is to observe that they're white, right? Like that they're part of that group. And so, and then what you were saying about the super secret Facebook group is something I say about like whiteness. Like the first rule of whiteness is we don't talk about whiteness. And it's just known as the default, right? Like that's just human nature, and everything else is different and other than. And white is the default. It's not a race. Everybody else has a race. Meanwhile, whiteness is indeed such a race, and we're so socialized and racialized to be white and to behave as white, and what whiteness means. And going back into all of us white people who came over from Europe and left vast rich cultures behind, or just sort of stopped engaging in our cultures, because to be other than sort of wonder bread white is was very dangerous.
I have Wonder Bread here. The movie, so I was like, wait, I think that's actually the bread.
I mean, that's
Sorry,
triggers like like so many good memories too. But just like that's sort of, it's just that we just to be sort of homogenous like that, don't stand out, don't speak another language, don't dress another way, don't don't bring any of your culture, any of that richness with you here, blend, and and that was done deliberately as a divide and conquer sort of strategy.
That is so, I have like 5 million thoughts. I should be writing notes, because like, I'm like, yeah, no, wait, hold on. Because that it just goes back to like when you think about when the enslaved and those who were doing sharecropping, or just those that were impoverished at that point, were going to band together.
Yeah.
And because they were all in a lower level class, and they were like, yeah, we can do this together. And then a group of people who are more wealthy were like, nah, you don't want to band with those darkies. Like don't band with them, because you're white.
Right.
And so even if they were not, and I mean, you're usually talking about at that point, you may be talking about your Irish immigrants who were lower level at that point. You're probably talking about your Scottish immigrants, depending which Scottish they were, because Scots came over in different waves. They came in, one as part of the tobacco trade, but also they were kicked out of England. So they also came in as your lower level folks who were sharecropping. They came in multiple ways into this country. So you do have this interesting dynamic of these people who are not necessarily white and whatever white was at that moment, but
Right.
when you get these two people who are about to connect and band together, it's like, no, you don't want to do that. It's better on this side. And then they blend in with this whiteness again. And it's fascinating. And I think that may even, I'm not my lane, so I'm gonna stop my next statement. But nope, I'm not gonna say my next statement. But it's not my lane, but it's interesting to see how they keep bringing in different groups when it's convenient.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it's always more convenient to be closer. It's a proximity to whiteness, and whatever that proximity to whiteness is, when it's good for the higher end, it is better than being black always.
Right.
Um, so that's an interesting. I'm glad you said that, because that all sort of connected a little bit more for me. Like, yeah, like they weren't cool, and then they were, because it's
Right.
convenient again.
Right. Right. Well, and it's just like all the laws that started getting passed that like gave like Irish Americans, like, you'll hear sometimes, and I think I heard this for the first time on that Pantsuit Nation post. Well, the Irish were slaves too. And I had never heard that as part of my, as part of my history, but I was like, what is this? And so doing a deeper dive into that, it's like, okay, not really. Right, like the Irish and Africans coming over from Africa, or brought over from Africa, stolen from Africa, were indentured servants, right? Sort of started out on the same, and but then, like you said, like they tried to band together because the conditions were terrible, and tried to band together, and so then the Irish were given just a little more privilege, right? A little more. And also then all the laws that were made to separate, right? So the anti-miscegenation laws, like you can't marry, like, right, like just like all these things that were to divide, separate, lift up the now white, now you're white, so you're a little closer to, like, you can aspire to be like more like the wealthy class that's ruling everything, and separate you from the enslaved Africans, and then make those conditions worse. And that's where it all started.
Yeah. Oh, America's so wonderful.
Mhm.
and it's and we pretend like it's not, like it's any different today. Like it's so funny seeing all those posts about like the 50s and all
Mm.
those like, oh, but it was so great back then. I was like, was it? Because was it
Like,
was it really?
right, for who exactly? Right.
Can we talk about what was happening in the 50s? Can we talk about the people being lynched, the people who were not getting good grades, the difference in segregation? And then one person was, I like, when I started engaging the posts, because one person kept saying segregation's not a thing anymore and racism's not a thing. I was like, oh, segregation's not a thing anymore. Can we talk about how and why Black and Brown communities were disproportionately impacted by COVID-19?
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about who could leave the inner cities during these times and who could
Mm-hmm.
not? Because
Mm-hmm.
that's a sign of segregation right there.
Mm-hmm.
And then can we also talk about racism's not a thing? So when everyone was marching through the streets because George Floyd got killed, and we were all upset about Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, and then the countless names that came after them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, racism's not a thing? I'm sorry, explain that to me again. Because we all found out just recently that the Breonna Taylor stuff was not what we thought it was.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah, but it's not real. Like what? What? This is a thing in the past. Was it though? Because now you just told me that Breonna Taylor just got lynched, and I don't understand what you're saying to me. Like, you
Right.
just told me we didn't hang them, we just shot them. Like, I don't understand how it's, like, explain this to me. Like,
Yeah. It's
um,
just different now, right? Like segregation is not legal now, but that it is still
but
happening.
it's still happening when property taxes are tied to money that goes into schools and where the property tax is coming from and who has the money paying for the property because who owns the property. And tell me
Right.
again how this all works.
Mhm. Right, or real estate agents, like, showing white people one neighborhood and people of color, Black people another neighborhood, like, that just happens, right? Like,
That just
that
naturally happens. And even how like all the different videos of people and like this is like 2020 and all those shows of, you know, when people remove the pictures of themselves from their homes, the
right,
value of the house changed.
right, right, right.
And
Yeah,
don't go into that neighborhood because it's not so great.
right.
I'm sorry, what now?
Yeah.
So how do you think segregation is not happening? Like when my uncle moved into his neighborhood, he was the only Black family, and it was
Mhm.
a wealthy neighborhood in Maryland. He was the only Black and Christian family. And it's funny that he said that because of course the only other person that I know that lives in that neighborhood is not Black and they're not Christian. So yeah, tell me again how the segregation thing is not a thing and how racism is not happening now. But people don't want to see outside of themselves. So I've asked a million questions that are not tied to any of my questions. So but it's such a like important conversation. And so one, I'm just thankful that you're here. I'm also thankful that you are my friend and that you are doing the work that you are doing. Um, you know, because it's a big deal. So thank you. But we've talked about some of the ugly of the world.
Mm.
You have fostered a community of people doing this work. You know people doing this work. What is something beautiful about this community?
Um, so yeah, I guess also just in anti-racism community in general, not just white people,
Mhm.
white people, I know that was what you wanted to talk about too, but just, just a multiracial group of anti-racist community building. But I think specific to white people doing this work, I think it's what's special about this community is that you kind of what I was sort of understanding, like I was thinking about this the other day, there's like a degree to which you can support, like I guess like these days, right? It's Black Lives Matter is sort of what civil rights, supporting civil rights back in the 60s would have been like. So it's Black Lives Matter now. So there's like a degree to which you can support it and still be tolerated within the white community, right? But if you go above that and you start to really support and you start to really interrogate it and interrogate whiteness and start to really force white people to start to look at things and like ask questions, and then you're not so liked anymore. Like people start to get tired of you, people start to like move away from you, people start to not want to deal with you, or people start to and so I think white people who really commit to this work are sort of can be in a kind of lonely place, because it's until you have that community. So that's why the community is so important, because um like we're a group of people that really understand something that no other group of people understand, or have an experience that no other group of people understand. And like people of color have their own experience, but white people who really kind of are trying to reject whiteness, and trying to help other people understand whiteness, um, like the way that and we're not taught like to be in community. As white people, we're taught to be independent and ruggedly individualistic. So to build community with other white people and know that each of us is kind of struggling with friends and family who are like, oh, enough with this, racism stuff. You're talking about this all the time. Um, I think there's a courage and a commitment, um, among white people doing this work that I really admire, and a heart, I think, and a deep commitment to like reclaiming the parts of our humanity that really got, we got disconnected from. There's so much of our humanity that we get disconnected from in having to deny and not pay attention to the humanitarian crisis that is systemic racism that's happening day in and day out. To not know about that, to block that out, to not pay attention to it, really chips away at our humanity. So I think just the white people doing this work, I feel like deeply connected to on a human level.
Thank you. There's like 2 questions that popped into my head as you were talking. So I was like, I'm going to write one of those down now. Because I don't want to let that one go.
Okay.
But the other question, I think I know, actually, I may not know, but for people who do not know, why are we choosing the word anti-racist work opposed to like, there's other words we could use, but why anti-racism? Like instead of like, my brain is not using it. And I know she even says it, Robin DiAngelo says it in her book, about like why the choice of anti-racism versus there's so many words. Like now my brain is like, what other words would we use? Instead of like I don't know, like working for equality or something like, so
like diversity, equity, like
yeah, like exactly,
like diversity, yeah,
like, so for any of those other words, why are we holding on to the word anti-racism?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question, because I think people try to lump things all together. I don't know. I don't have a really good formulated answer. Like I know what I'm thinking, but words are. I think that I don't know. I think we really try to, white people in particular try to deny the racist aspect of, all the kind of intersections of oppression, right? Like anti-Blackness is just so intense and so deadly and so extreme. And at every other level of oppression, right, you've got anti-Blackness even within that, right? So you've got, no matter what other oppression you're facing within that group, you've also got people within that group who are anti-Black. So I think to try to dilute it and not bring in the racial component or call it something else misses the whole point.
Yeah, like she does sort of imply that, and I think she doesn't say it that way as I'm thinking about it. And I don't remember what word she chose not to use, and now I can't think of it. I'm so mad I can't.
You need to pause and like find it in the book.
I don't even know where the book is right now.
Oh, no.
Like, when you finish the book, you put the book down. Don't ask me where I put the book down.
Right.
Don't ask me where that book is right now. But she so she does sort of talk about like, if you can solve all the problems by going to the worst problem, essentially, right? Like, and so it is that same conversation. Like if you start working with if you like, it's the same issue with like feminism, right? Like I've been having, this is the whole thing with intersectional feminism or the lack thereof, right? We often talk about like white women's scale of pay, right? But when we stop there, there's a whole slew of women right behind that are not going to get paid equal to any level. But that's how we always operate. That's essentially the problem with feminism, because feminism is general feminism. And she mentions of womenism, and I didn't even realize, like, I still got a lot of work to do. But the reason why womenism became into play was because of the fact that Black folks were being excluded from the conversation, and she was highlighting that difference. And I'm not saying Robin DiAngelo was the person who came up with womenism. Don't ask me the names because I am terrible with names, but I'm going to Google this right now. So yes, there's a lot of people who are tied to this title, but it does look like it is it was definitely a Black woman. Oh, so Alice Walker was the one who coined it. So in a short story, but it was expanded upon later. The idea being that we are not included in the conversation. So we're going to use a different term so that we
Right.
have our own conversation. And that being because if you don't focus on the lowest paid person, then not everyone's ever going to get paid. You
Right.
pay attention to the lowest paid person, then everyone gets paid better. Point blank period. You know, and I think that's the point. I think it's and I think that's why you have to focus on racism being a big issue, because I mean, classism has driven, or capitalism has driven racism. But it has only gotten there because of the existence of racism. And so you have to focus on undoing racism so that capitalism has nothing to stand on when it comes to that. And so you can fix a lot of these other issues when you stop tethering the two, and or fixing the problem with this issue people have with their eyes and their money in their hearts, and a lot of other in their mouths, and a whole lot of other things when it comes to how they see other people. But yeah, so that I wanted to, like, as you were saying, I was like, yeah, but we guys talk about anti-racism and why we're using that term, because I think people don't understand that term. And I always try to make sure people who are getting to terms that they don't know can have that backstory, because I know you and I use it very easily and smoothly, but somebody who's listening and that's the first time hearing that term, I wanted to make sure they understood more so why that word and not others.
Yeah.
So I'm like on the fence in the next question. I'm like, which question am I going to? I think I'm gonna go to this one, because I had this I'm gonna give you a quick backstory. I talk too much in this. It's really about you, but this is a real conversation.
Yeah.
So I had this conversation with someone this week. By the time people hear this, is going to be some weeks ago, whichever way that goes. But it was about this. Did you see the thing with the Emmys and Quinta Brunson that happened and Jimmy
Yes.
Kimmel?
I've seen photographs. I haven't seen the whole video. But like
Yeah.
I got the general idea of.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
mean, no one needs to see the video. I've never seen the video, like, but because
Mhm.
I don't even watch award ceremonies, but
Yeah.
the whole issue with him taking up space, and still, like, no one talks about Quinta B won this award.
Mhm.
We talk about Jimmy Kimmel laid down as Quinta B tried to give her speech.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, she came on his show on Wednesday, and that was always planned that she was going on her show, but she interrupted his monologue or whatever to say her thank yous because of him. But here's the thing, any retraction happens later in the newspaper, like days after. It's not on the headline anymore. It's later. It's on the B side, after the fold, in the small print. Nobody remembers that. No one talks about the retraction, really. They talk about what happened. And so I'm in a debate group, and in the debate group, we've been going back and forth about this topic. And this person was like, yeah, but it's like crying wolf. And this is another person of color, but it was not a Black woman. And it's like crying wolf. You know, we can't pick up every fight all the time. And they were like, I don't understand. I don't see the racism in this. And I'm like, my end comment was like, the bigger problem here is that you are not trusting a Black woman who runs into these instances all the time, who is saying that this is a racist problem. This is inherently a racist act, whether it was conscious or not, whether she chose to have a problem with it or not. There are optics at play on a world stage that took place, and this is a problem. And rather than humble yourself and consider that I have more authority on this topic than you do as a non-Black woman, you are insisting that this is not a problem or that I should let it go. And then I ultimately shared with him the video from our favorite therapist of the I don't know if she's your favorite, but the Black therapist who's always speaking online. I can't think of her name. You watch her on TikTok. I sent you her video.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so, because she talks about it too for a moment. She has a quick video about the topic. And so I dropped that in there too after the fact. But I was like, I'm not being paid for my labor in this conversation. So I'm not doing this anymore with you. But his point was like, this is not like, we could just let this go. And so my question for you, is there ever a time to not confront a moment that happened? Like when you see something racist happening, or when you're aware of it, is there a moment to just like, this is not the time to address it?
Wow, that's, I mean, I guess there's a lot of levels to that. I think I can only, and I imagine you're asking like as a white person, right? Like I can't speak for people of color, like
Yeah.
right, your exhaustion level, but for white people, you know, I used to say, no, there's never a time you should confront everything every time. I think do I still feel like, I feel like it's a little more, I mean, I guess it depends on what's happening. You know, and how big of a, you know, an affront it is. Is it something like how I think now I'm thinking about wanting to be effective. How, what's the way I can be effective? Is it something that like everybody else in the room knows and this person is just like sort of on a totally different planet, and you know, I can take them aside later and say, hey, you know, like XYZ, what you said was like, or is this something that maybe other people in the room also need to understand? It's important to, you know, that like sort of like the people in the audience or whoever's watching also be educated about something. And it's yeah, I think what's going to be the most effective and change someone's behavior, and you know, depending on what is the composition of the room, right? Are there people of color in the room who are, you know, maybe exhausted and tired of doing this kind of education, and does a white person need to step in and, you know, just confront it, just to take, you know, take some of the weight off of people of color for having to do the work. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
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 But like, does everything have to be confronted? Yes. You know, as a white person, everything has to be confronted eventually at some point. Maybe not in the moment, but everything has to be confronted at some point.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think there's factors at play. I think safety is at play, and that's something that you have to just, I think safety is at play, but also like, does that trump the situation is the question, you know? But like, I think there's always like, I mean, one person did something really crazy the other day. Like I was listening to her tell this story about doing something really crazy in like the middle of nowhere. And we were like, yeah, next time just keep driving. Like next
Yeah.
time let's not.
Yeah.
Let's not do this.
You know, that's a good point too, because it reminds me of a time where I confronted something that I probably shouldn't have confronted. I probably should have just let it go. It was like it was after it was, you know, 2020, right after the George Floyd murder, and there were a lot of protests in New York, and I was working and I was coming downstairs to like go get a sandwich or something, and there was a Black woman and her son who was like maybe 10 or 11, and they were carrying a sign. I don't remember what it said, but you know, maybe like something Black Lives Matter kind of sign. And a white older woman kind of got in this Black woman's face and said something to the effect like, all lives matter. Don't you think all lives matter? All lives matter. And you know, I was putting money in the meter. That was what was going on. I was putting money in the meter and like kind of turn around, and you know, so the Black woman is kind of just stunned, and she's like, uh-huh, yes, yes. And then the white woman kind of goes away. And I was in a moment where like I was feeling compelled to say something, and, you know, I said something to her, um
To her who, which one? The
oh,
mom or
sorry,
the
to the white woman,
okay.
and, and then she circled back around and attacked the Black woman again. Not even me, like, not attacked, but, like, started
Yeah.
yelling again, saying her same thing, all lives matter," whatever, but she got back in this Black woman's face, and I was like, "Oh, shit." Like, I brought her back, and, like, of course she's not going to come at me, she's going to come back at this Black woman. And I was like, you know what, I should have just let her go on her merry little racist way. And it was a big learning for me, actually, that, like, yeah, no, maybe we don't confront everything every time. So yeah, that was actually,
Interesting.
like, I feel like I did harm in that moment.
I mean, it's interesting because you can't know you can't know what that person was gonna do. Like in some ways, right? Like you probably you were trying to do good. You also couldn't know that she was going to attack this person again, but also like it's probably a good bet that she probably would have come after her because again, like the easier target is who
Right,
you go for.
right,
You're not the easier target,
right,
you
right. I
know.
learned a lot that day. I learned a ton that day about, yeah, about
Yeah,
all of that, all those dynamics.
it's very interesting. And I think, I think I have a lot of different feelings about that question. And so and I think I thank you for not having just an outright answer because I don't think it's an outright answer. But I
Yeah.
think, at one point I told someone like, I'm tired and we've been here before. And we're gonna see this again. Like I was like,
Mhm,
we're going to see this again and I'm tired. Like this is nothing new. And this is around the George Floyd stuff and everything.
mhm,
And they were like, but you can't be tired. And it was the white woman telling me this. And I'm just
mhm,
like, ma'am, I can be whatever, like whatever I want. There were power dynamics at play that I really couldn't just say what I wanted to say involved.
mhm,
But I'm like, no, you're the one who can't be like in that moment. I wanted to be like, you're the one who can't be tired because you need to get off your little self and do the work, because it's not for me to like, I can't undo racism. The way I see a lot of my work in the anti-racist work that I kind of try to attempt as minimally as I do in some extent, it's really like it's like I see it like church. You give people the Bible, you let them read it, but there's a pastor for a reason. Like you don't just give a bunch of people the Bible and say, go off now, the religion. There's always
mhm,
someone else who's a little bit more scholarly on it to make sure everyone's sort of in the same group.
mhm.
Like as much as I trust white people to like go do the good work, simultaneously I'm like, I leave y'all to your devices. You're gonna go screw the pooch on this one too. So let me go check in on y'all sometimes. Make sure y'all still on the right path because all of a sudden y'all gonna be out. It's gonna be like Vampire in Harlem. You're gonna be outside saying bad is good because y'all don't let someone steer you in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, hello, no, let's not get back in the church. Get back in the church.
Mhm.
Because you misunderstood one thing a little bit and just ended up steered the wrong way. So I feel like yeah, I just like the second time I've referenced that movie. I gotta go watch it again soon. But it's like that's how I sort of see it. Like we need partners. We all need to do the work together. It's got to be a tag team, but simultaneously, I'm like, but y'all can't just do it on your own. Y'all need to be like, because it's a drug. It's like just like that statement your person said, like just like everyone's
Right,
being re-socialized into their place at every moment. As much
right,
as I can sit there and go, I'm fabulous, I'm great, I have autonomy. Do you know what happened tomorrow? I'll be told about my place.
right, right,
And I may sort of feel like I have a place and I may fall right back into it too.
right.
So we all have our places and roles that society keeps pushing us into because let's go watch a movie tomorrow. Bet you what that movie's gonna tell us who
Right.
the hero is and who the bad guy is.
That's right. That's right. And I think that it's worth mentioning. So I have a white co-leader, and then the two of us meet with a Black woman, anti-racist educator, social worker, therapist, right? Like, and to make sure that we're not sort of leading people astray, and that we're, in check and checking our work.
Yeah, you're not out in the street singing "Bad is Good" as a
Exactly.
choir.
Right.
You know? Did you
Exactly.
ever see that movie Vampire in Harlem?
No.
It's such a great. It's a terrible movie. It's an Eddie
Uh-huh.
Murphy movie, and he's a vampire in Harlem. But because vampires can't go into church, he ends up leading the choir out in front of the church, having them sing this song "Bad is Good."
Oh my, I have to watch this. I have to find this movie.
It's such a
I don't know this movie.
great terrible moment because you're just like, this is hilariously bad. Like, no, don't sing. Yes, yes, keep singing. No, don't sing. Yes.
Uh-huh.
So it's just like that's how I see that moment. It's like you just accidentally you're the choir of the church and you just accidentally strayed to the wrong
Right.
place. But yeah. So is there a fun fact about your community that you can share?
A fun fact.
It may not be so easy. This is the one that trips everyone up. Just so you know.
Yeah, I know. Like, I mean, this is payback. I just asked a group of people like to in a go around to come up with a fun fact about themselves, and now I feel like
Got
karma,
questions next, so think about both.
karma just came right back to me. Fun fact about the community. It's, I think where I'm getting tripped up is that a fun fact is that it's hard for white people to know while we're doing this work if we're allowed to have fun. Because it's such serious work. And then part of what we grapple with is, again, the reclaiming of our humanity, part of that is also joy and fun. So I think there's like a struggle around, can we do this work? Can we also have fun? Can we also laugh? But it's like, yeah, part of this work is building community. And so, like sometimes, like, and the work can be of the community building work can be fun. And the coming together. Yeah.
That's good to know. I mean, I guess it is serious work and it is hard work. And then, sometimes when you are sillier, you tend to, not you, but we as people tend to accidentally cross a line. So that is interesting because you're always, am I doing this right sort of deal when you're doing such serious work. But
Yeah.
also like sometimes I think when you're, not that it's ever right, but I think the more comfortable you are, you're also better in a place to make fun of things too. Just not make fun of things, but to like to be more comfortable. I can't find the right words, but
The word that's coming to my mind is authenticity,
Mm.
right? Like, because I think whiteness is such a performance. Like it's learning how to perform being a human being, and it's so little about authenticity. It's like all what other people think. And we don't learn how to really be or feel in so many ways. And so, the fun part is like getting in touch with like, oh, my authentic self. And like part of my authentic self is like really being able to have joy and fun, with other people.
That is beautiful.
Mm.
That is beautiful. So is there a fun fact about yourself? Not even tied to this topic, but just something fun about Virginia that people should know.
Sure. Fun fact about me is that, and you know this, and you were part of this, is that I claimed my love of cooking over the pandemic. But cooking in a way I had never done before, cooking while on the phone with Dara. And yeah, that's a fun fact about me.
So you would be, so for people who don't know, the thing that Dara doesn't do is cook.
Right. And I tried.
Dara doesn't do that. Dara does not. Dara does not.
Dara does not.
I had a friend years and years and years ago say, I don't know anyone who cooks less than you. And that's probably true, given that like I don't know the last time I've cooked at this point. Like I don't know the last time I boiled an egg at this moment. It's been during the pandemic, but have I done it in 2022?
No.
That I cannot confirm at this moment.
Mhm.
2022 has been a different year. It's been a different beast. And that's all
Yeah.
I'm gonna say on that one. But
Yeah.
I was thinking this morning, okay, you're gonna have to get over yourself and learn to cook.
Hmm.
And then I was like, really though? So so there's two sides to that. But part of me was like, no, yes, really, you're gonna have to figure out how to do something in this kitchen
Mhm.
because you cannot be ordering the way that you are.
Mhm.
So I was thinking about that gnocchi lesson
I
you gave
know.
me.
I taught you how to make gnocchi.
I know. I still never made that gnocchi that I bought. So yeah, I don't know how to cook and I don't do it at all. That is not my skill. That is
Mhm.
not, people have blessings and that is not mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is wonderful to travel with Virginia because she likes to. So yes, everyone get you a Virginia who's a great travel partner for many reasons, but one of them, she enjoys cooking.
I'll whip up some gnocchi.
You can help. Like I liked washing the dishes. She likes cooking. It worked out well. So yeah, you did do that a lot, and it's a great time for us to bond over the phone as you do that. So that is a fun
Chocolate
fact.
vegetables.
People have now had two fun facts because I've never mentioned that on the show. So wonderful. Um, is there anything that frustrates you about the state of your community?
Mm. Well, I mean, I think um right now, um, white people who are actively doing anti-racist work, um, you know, but I'm not gonna express any frustration because people are trying to do the best they can. But yeah, a lot of frustration with white people who think they're doing the work and aren't doing the internal work, aren't doing work every single day. There's a ton of work to be done. And, taking one course or one class or one workshop or reading one book is not it. And yeah, again, right, we are being re-socialized into whiteness every single day. And so this is daily work, it's a daily practice. And um yeah, I think, just the denial that we are in a humanitarian crisis, and a profound humanitarian crisis, and the inability to be in touch with that, and I understand it too, because there's a tremendous amount of horror and grief that comes with really getting in touch with that. But then I think that's also what puts us back in touch with our humanity. But
So how did you handle that horror and grief? Or
mm,
what advice would you give? I mean, it's a two-sided question. Like, how did you handle it? What advice would you give to someone who's trying to navigate that?
um
Or how
I
do you handle it? Because if it's ongoing work, you're probably
yeah,
running it.
I mean, I remember when it first like really broke through in a huge way. When I first started doing this work, it was a really intellectual exercise in a way. Like I was learning so much, and then I was wanting to teach other white people, and I thought that posting information on Facebook was going to change everybody. Like that, I was so naive. Like I was thinking, people just need information. We just don't know this information. And then so I was, the first time I had done a workshop about white fragility, it was very intellectualized. And then the second time I did it, I remember sort of going through the timeline, the history of like from slavery and Jim Crow and all that. And I just was overwhelmed. Like I really got in touch with the horror of everything. And I curled up on my hotel bed in the fetal position and just sobbed and just like wailed. And yeah, I was, and then, let it like kind of roll through me, and then I was like, well, if I'm giving this presentation and I start to cry, then I'm going to cry. Like I'm just going to be in that. And I think, how do I deal with it now? Just like let those feelings come. Just really let them come and know that they're real and that they're big, and um that they fuel the work too. They fuel um how hard, and how, just that horror. I want to see an end to that horror, maybe not in my lifetime, but as soon as possible, and to be part of that. And yeah, and just sort of connect with it too, connect with it a little bit every day, just really be in touch with it, to not get so disconnected from it.
That is, as I hear you, it really reminded me of when I first realized that I was being treated differently. Like
Mm,
when I just did a
mm,
presentation just like yours, not like yours, but very similarly, where I walked people through slavery
mhm,
to Reconstruction
mhm,
to uh, the Great Migration to essentially civil rights
mhm,
to today. But I
mhm,
did it via my family,
mm,
and because I was making it personal.
mhm,
So I was showing the artifacts of those time periods and people, pictures of people
mhm,
that led to me and such. And it was of motives and such as I did that meeting. I mean, as I led that presentation, I did the presentation a couple of times. One as practices, and then I presented it twice. I presented it once for my bigger group if somebody had missed it. So I did it for the person who missed it and another friend as well. But I think about so I talk about how racism was always there
mhm,
through the
mhm,
whole time, and what was in the backdrop, or what was I learning during these times. But for these purposes, I didn't do all the pain points. I just did like my relationship to work and my success. But when I got to grad school at NYU, and it's the first time I'm outside. I'm not outside of a New York bubble because I'm in New York. It was the first
yeah,
time around non-New York white people.
uh-huh,
And
uh-huh,
there's so much white guilt in that
uh-huh,
program that
uh-huh,
it was just like, I don't know who I'm showing up as a student, because am I teaching y'all about blackness every day, or am I just being, that's the first time I felt that's the first time I felt exhausted being black, because I didn't
uh-huh,
know if I was teaching or if I was a student. And I
right,
was the debate every time, if I was a representative for my entire race or if I was just me.
mhm,
And it got tiring. And then it was like, oh, this is what, and then it gave me a chance to see what white people thought when I wasn't around.
mm,
Because even though I'm in the room, there's like three of us in the room. So people felt a little bit more comfortable to say some of their guilt and their feelings about, how do I teach these little kids who have no chance? And as I'm in the class with them, I'm just like,
mhm, mhm, mhm,
I'm in the room with you.
mhm,
you know?
right here.
I'm from the South Bronx. I'm in the room with you. What's happening here? We make it to NYU.
Mhm,
You know?
right,
So, but so it was painful.
mhm,
And I was like, bump all white people, like I'm over this. Like, I don't, and I didn't like being that person. But I had to be angry for a while. But I had to have like the
mhm,
one or two white people in my life who sort of kept me from like flipping tables and being like, bump all of y'all. But I
mhm,
also know my tolerance level right now is close to that. And
yes,
so it's interesting because it's all the difference in behavior, this the messages that come, it's the different reality that exists. So it's interesting to we're all victims of this system that is created, and we're
mhm,
all suffering from it, and we all need to heal from it. And it
mhm,
goes back to my point again, some people will gain from it, some people will lose from it as we heal, but we all actually gain as we heal.
absolutely,
Whether it's we all gain our humanity,
yeah,
whichever way it goes. We
right,
may lose the facade.
Right.
It made us think we were better,
Right.
but
Right.
we may lose the facade that made us think we were worse, but we gain our humanity if we can get through this work. And I think that'll be the beautiful thing in the end. Because I always have to unlearn the lessons of my place by people who want to keep putting me in it.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and vice versa. And I got to remember that, like, no, I can be powerful. And
Mhm.
even though you see me and my locks long before I ever say hello, and you've already judged me based upon that,
Mhm.
I still have rights and autonomy and get to say and be whoever I get to be when I want to.
Mhm.
And bump what you think you get to do.
Yeah.
You know? And so there's all of that. But it's so interesting that we all gain if we can get
Yeah.
this work right.
Definitely.
Hopefully we will. Um, there was another question or a statement and it popped into my head twice. And I'm like, it's so important. I want it to come, and it left me again. It's bothering me. Oh, it was just something else you said before, and I thought it should be brought into this space. Um, someone once asked me, well, when do you just get to be a person? And yeah, because they were so like tired of hearing me talk about being Black and that plight.
Uh,
And they're like, so when do you just get to be a person? And I was like, and I didn't even have words for that at that moment, even though I'm still, this is shortly after Pantsuit Nation stuff. And I mean, I'm in the middle of writing 2X chromosomes with extra shot of melanin.
mhm.
But it was so fascinating for them to land at that question, because
Mhm.
that is exactly that point that you were making earlier about, like, that's whiteness is the pinnacle. And
Mhm.
so this person was asking me, when do I get to be just a person?
Mhm.
Like, being a Black woman wasn't just a person.
Right. Right.
And like, or that I could take my Blackness off one
Right.
day
Right.
and just exist like them.
Like, yeah, separated. Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah. But it was a question asked by
Yeah.
a grown white woman,
Yeah.
same age group as me.
Yeah.
And it was just like, like, but that's what individual does. And that's what that standard does, is
Yeah.
make my plight not make me a person.
Right.
And that's why this work is important, so that we can all be people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're at the last two questions. Um, how do we support your community and the work that they're doing? Because it's clearly important.
Huh. Um, how do we support? I guess by here's something. I guess I would say that, like when white people are sort of at the early stages of doing this work, right? And they're doing anti-racism work. In the early stages, they just want to be like, we just want to be in mixed race spaces. We just want to have interactions with people of color. And, but that's also when we can do the most harm. Um, and so, white people really need to be in spaces with other white people first to learn about sort of like what the weapons of whiteness are and how, like, what kinds of microaggressions we're engaging in that we don't even realize. So, to point white people in the direction of whiteness groups and white educators when they've shown that maybe they're not ready to be talking about race in mixed race spaces. I think that's a win-win for everybody, uh, pointing white people in the direction of whiteness groups.
Is there a way for a person of color to make that suggestion that's not necessarily insulting?
Um, is there? I don't. That's a good question. I guess it depends, right? Like if the person is open and willing, and like if you confronted them, they've made a microaggression, they're sorry, they want to do better, right? Like that's a way that they can do better. It's like the best way for you to do better is to learn about this stuff in spaces where there are not other people of color, so that you can make all your mistakes there and do all your learning there, and then come back into spaces where there are people of color, and you'll do so much less harm. So, depending on how safe it feels to make that kind of recommendation to a white person, but somebody who is kind of eager and well-meaning, but tripping all over the place and doing harm, yeah, making that sort of recommendation.
Okay. So I was just thinking about, I was like, if I said that, it would sound so shady.
Oh yeah.
And it maybe they deserve the shade, but also it would not sound particularly nice. And I was like, I don't think they would listen to me if I made that recommendation.
Mhm.
And I'm not a shady person mostly, but I just
What sounds shady about it too? Why does it sound shady?
me saying like, because I think it's me. It's the
Yeah.
Black person saying
Yeah.
like, you know what, maybe you're not ready to interact with me. Go hang out with some white folks in practice. And there's some groups for that. Like, I mean, that sounds like a shady way to say it, but like there's also like, I mean, I probably wouldn't say it that way, but that is essentially the still same point, right? Like maybe you want to go find a group that will help you with that. It still sounds like I'm rejecting them. um, and that may be hurtful to them.
Maybe, but I think white people need to know that we're not safe in every space, right? Like I think that's
There's this amazing group that I'm part of on Facebook, and it is a Black group, and so it's
yeah,
a Black group. And if you don't
yeah,
identify as Black, and it's not just I'm not saying that it's just a non-white, it's a non, if you are not Black, you're not part
right,
of this group.
right.
And so they were like, oh, so to our non-Black members, if you are we just want to say welcome, how are you, let us know how we can make it more inclusive for you. The people who got blocked for responding to that post
Right, right. That's how
was
you weed
delicious.
weed people out.
It was
Oh,
just like, exactly. They're like, oh no, it's great. You keep doing what you're doing. Great, former member.
yeah.
Get everyone out. We're like, it's clear, like it's very clear that you had to you had to be Black to be part of this group. Why are you here? And so they're just like, oh, remember, here's your exit. We're glad you enjoyed your stay. You know? I know because of your career path that your radar is low in terms of social media and such. Is there any way that people who wanted to engage with you should be able to reach out to you if they needed to, or?
Sure. So the groups that my co-leader and I do are on racialliteracygroups.com. And so if you go to that web page and you kind of scroll down to who all the group leaders are on within that consortium, we're on there, and there are a bunch of different kinds of groups. There's all sorts of groups for all sorts of people. But yeah, there's we're in there with our group is known as Breaking the Silence, White Racial Resiliency Group, teaching white people to be more resilient.
And so this isn't just a therapist group. This is anyone.
Okay.
Okay.
We do work with a lot of therapists because that's who we know, but it's for anyone who identifies as white.
Awesome. I have to say it has been a huge pleasure to have this conversation with you. Thank you for joining me on behalf of.
Thanks for having me.
It's been great. And so if you have enjoyed this conversation, I do have a monthly membership thing. So check that out on Spotify or whatever page it is. I'm gonna have to figure that out. But it's the links say how to do that. Thank you for listening to this episode on behalf of, and I will speak to you next time. Enjoy.